We are on the record for hearings in the matters listed in the North Dakota Industrial Commission hearing docket for November 16th, 2022. I am Stephen Nelson, hearing examiner for these hearings. We are at the hearing room for the Department of Mineral Resources, Oil and Gas Division, and it is 9 o'clock a.m. On the docket, the following matters will be continued or dismissed. Case number 29679 will be continued to January. Case number 29405 will be continued to December. Case number 29230 will be continued to December. On page 6, case number 29686 will be dismissed. Case number 29687 will be dismissed. Case number 29688 will be dismissed, and case number 29690 will be dismissed. On the supplemental docket, case number 29346 will be continued to December. The administrative docket begins on page 2 with case number 29682 and goes through case number 29690 and includes the docket supplement with case number 29346. These cases will be heard in the next room with Michael Zisch. Audio recordings of the cases on the administrative docket will be placed on the Oil and Gas website by the end of the week. If you wish to appear in one of the matters on the administrative docket, please appear in the next room. If there's opposition to the matter, it will be brought back into this hearing room to be heard, and your statements and evidence will be taken. We'll begin with case number 29679, application of Oventive USA Inc. for an order granting relief for the 1220-foot setback policy for a well in a stand-up 1280-acre space unit for the Ranch Coulee Bakken Pool, described as Sections 3 and 10, Township 146 North, Range 98 West, McKenzie County, ND, and for such other relief as may be appropriate. This case is continued to January. Case number 29405, application of Oventive Production Inc. for an order amending the applicable orders for the Sand Creek Bakken Pool to establish an overlapping 38 40-acre space unit described as Sections 15, 16, 21, 22, 27, and 28, Township 153 North, Range 96 West, McKenzie County, ND, and authorize one horizontal well to be drilled on such unit and granting such other relief as may be appropriate. This case is continued to December. Case number 29680, application of Marathon Oil Co. for an order amending the applicable orders for the Murphy Creek Bakken Pool, Dunn County, ND, to establish two overlapping 19-20-acre space units described as Sections 21, 28, and 33, and Sections 22, 27, and 34, Township 145 North, Range 96 West, and authorize 4 horizontal wells to be drilled on each such unit. Establish an overlapping 38 40-acre spacing unit described as Sections 21, 22, 27, 28, 33, and 34, Township 145 North, Range 96 West, and authorize 1 horizontal well to be drilled on such unit and granting such other relief as may be appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Marathon Oil Company. I have 3 witnesses appearing telephonically: Taylor Roberts, Sarah Beth Donaldson, and Farshad Layla Roque, and I'll call them now. Taylor, are you guys there? You all there? Okay.
Taylor Roberts, can you hear me?
Taylor, are you guys there?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right.
Hello?
Thank you. Do you, Ms. Roberts, do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do, yes, sir.
Mr. Roberts.
Taylor, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Sure. My name is Taylor Roberts. I'm an advanced land professional for Marathon Oil Company with a business address of 990 Town and Country Boulevard, Houston, Texas, 77024.
And Taylor, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes, sir.
Have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the land matters associated with these proposed spacing units?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Roberts be received as that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
And Taylor, let's start with your Exhibit L1, the area map.
Sure. Exhibit L1, we see the two 1920s outlined in the orange dash lines and the proposed 3840 outlined in the purple dash lines. The western 1920 would be sections 21, 28, and 33 of Township 145 North, Range 96 West, and the eastern 1920 being sections 22, 27, and 34 of 145 North, 96 West.
Okay. And are all of the underlying units all Marathon-operated units?
That is correct.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to L2A, if you can take us through your working interest in the first 1920.
Sure. The 1920 consisting of sections 21, 28, 33. Marathon has a working interest of 95.51%, and that's the western 1920.
Okay. Let's move on to L2B, the eastern 1920.
Sure. The eastern 1920 consists of sections 22, 27, and 34, and Marathon has a working interest of 94.14% in this 1920.
Okay. And then moving on to L3, the 3840.
Correct. The 3840, consisting of the sections of 21, 22, 27, 28, 33, and 34, Marathon has a working interest of 94.83%.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Roberts. I'd offer the land exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to Ms. Donaldson. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, sir.
Sarah Beth, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Yes. Sarah Beth Donaldson. I'm an advanced geologist from Marathon Corporation, located at 990 Town and Country Boulevard, Houston, Texas, 77024.
And Sarah Beth, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes, sir.
Have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes, sir.
And are you familiar with the geology underlying the proposed spacing units?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Ms. Donaldson be received as that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
And Sarah Beth, let's start with your exhibit number G1. Can you take us through the structure?
Yes. So depicted is the Upper Bakken Trail structure map with a contour interval of 20 feet. The full 3840 acre spacing unit is shown in the red dashed box, which has an average dip of only a half a degree. The pink line from A to A prime is our cross-section that will be shown in Exhibit G2.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to G2, if you can take us through your cross-section.
Yep. So here's the cross-section shown in the previous exhibit from A to A prime. As you can see, Middle Bakken is our primary target interval for this entire area, and it has an average thickness with very little variation across each, with a maximum of only 2 feet.
And let's move on to Exhibit G3. If you can walk us through your proposed plan of development for each of the 1920s and the 3840.
Okay. So Exhibit G3 shows our plan of development for both 1920 acre spacing and the one section line well within the 3840 acre spacing unit. Marathon's latest drill schedule has both of these pads drilled in succession on the same rig line with an estimated spud date of June 2023. Each pad will be batch drilled. And our latest frac schedule also has both pads fracked in succession with each pad zipper fracked. To optimize development across these units and to maximize the operational efficiency, we've decided to plug and abandon all but one parent well, one in the original 1280-acre spacing units in sections 27 and 34. By plug and abandoning these wells, we are able to optimize our well spacing across these units while maximizing our lateral length with modern completions. The laydown well across these sections in 21 and 22 is immediate drilling and operational hazard, whereas the stand-up wells across sections 28 and 33 and 27 and 34 impose more of an operational risk as the liner weight is low of only 11.6 pounds per foot. So this poses the risk of collapsed liner after frac and unsuccessful cleanout.
Okay. I have no further questions for Ms. Donaldson. I'd offer the geology exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Sarah Beth, I think you indicated that one well would not be plugged and abandoned. Can you confirm which well that is that'll be in?
Yeah. Of course. It's going to be the easternmost well in sections 27 and 34. The reason for this is because it was more of a 27 refrac candidate who has a liner weight of 13.5, so it does not impose an immediate risk of collapsed liners or the unsuccessful cleanout.
And will those be plugged and abandoned before you begin your drilling operations, or you plan to drill the wells and complete them and then plug them, or what's the timing?
The laydown will be prior to the drilling just due to the anti-collision issues. We will try to see as we run our well plan against the drilling engineers to confirm whether or not we can drill through these, but if needed, we can temporarily abandon them, and then before fracking, they will be plugged and abandoned.
Okay. And then just to confirm, the existing wells, are they all Middle Bakken targeted wells?
Yes, they are.
And all of your proposed wells are also Middle Bakken, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, move on to your third witness. Was it Ms. Layla Roque? Or,
Mr. Yeah.
Mr. Layla Roque, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, sir.
Farshad, can I have you state your name and spell it for the record?
My name is Farshad Lalarot, and you want me to spell the first and last name?
Go ahead and do both.
Farshad, and my last name Lalarot, Lalehrokhh.
Okay. And Farshad, can you tell us by whom you're employed and in what capacity, and give us your business address?
I am a senior reservoir engineer at Martin Oil, located at 990 Tarrant County Boulevard, Houston, Texas 77024.
And Farshad, have you previously testified before this commission?
No, sir.
Can you just briefly take us through your educational background and work experience?
I have a master and PhD in petroleum engineering from UT Austin, and I've been in business, an oil and gas business, and I've been a reservoir engineer for about 13 years.
Okay. And Farshad, are you familiar with the engineering-related matters associated with these proposed spacing units?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you've put together some exhibits for the hearing?
Yes.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Lalaro be received as that of an expert in this case.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
All right. And Farshad, let's start with your exhibit E1A. If you can take us through the reservoir data and economics for that proposed 1,920-acre spacing unit.
Sure. So the proposed wells are Middle Bakken wells with an expected production of 740,000 barrels of oil. And this is out of an original oil in place of about 15 million barrels of oil for the 1920-acre unit, leading to a well recovery factor of about 5%. The well is expected to have a positive return with a BFIT entry return of $5 million. The economics are based on $50 WTI flat rate.
Okay. And then let's move on to E1B. I'm not sure, this is the other 1920. If there's anything different with this one, you can point that out for us.
The only difference would be that we are going to keep one well on a stream here, the East Boston well, and the rest will be the same.
Okay. And then let's move on then to the 3840 in E1C.
So 3840 is for the section line well in the middle, and the econs will be the same as other exhibits.
Okay. And moving on to E2, can you just describe for us how you would plan to drill and complete the proposed wells?
But the real completion plan for this well is going to be our standard, which is to run and cement 7-inch casing past the kickoff point, then to run and cement a 4.5-inch liner approximately 15,000 feet further. We will be completing 6 stages in a plug-and-perf manner. The total well cost is expected to be around $9 million. This includes location, facilities, and artificial lift cost.
Okay. And Farshad, in your opinion, if you get these 1920s and the 3840 approved for that proposed development, is that going to prevent waste, protect relative rights, prevent the drilling of unnecessary
Yes.
wells?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions. I'd offer the engineering exhibits and the gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Farshad, this is Bruce Hicks. I was just looking at your economics. What did you use for the price of gas?
It's about $2.35.
Two-
Dollar.
$2.45?
2.35.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Anything further in this matter, Mr. Mann?
No, Mr. Examiner, thank you.
That will conclude the hearing in case number 29680. Moving on, case number 29230. Temporary spacing to develop an oil and/or gas pool discovered by the True Oil LLC number 31-36 Northern State Well, file number 37495, the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of section 36, township 148 north, range 102 west, McKenzie County, ND. Define the field limits and enact such special field rules as may be necessary. This case is continued to December. Case number 29633. Application of SEG Williston LLC for an order amending the applicable orders for the Stanley Bakken Pool to establish an overlapping 1280-acre spacing unit described as sections 1 and 12, Township 155 North, Range 91 West, Montreal County, ND, and authorize 4 horizontal wells to be drilled on such unit and for such other relief as may be appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of SEG Williston LLC. I'll have 3 witnesses appearing telephonically in this case and the next case. Laura Hudson, David Williamson, and Jared Frankie. And I'll call them now. Laura, you there? Okay. David and Jared as well? All right.
All right, we'll start with Ms. Hudson. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do, yes.
Laura, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Sure. My name is Laura Hudson. I am employed by Stevens Production Company as land manager and on behalf of Stevens Energy, SEG Williston LLC. Our address is 1780 Hughes Landing Boulevard, Suite 300, The Woodlands, Texas, 77380.
And Laura, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes.
Have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the land matters associated with these spacing units?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Ms. Hudson be received as that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
And Laura, let's go ahead and start with your Exhibit A1, if you can identify the spacing unit.
L1, it just it section shows where sections 112 are in the area in 155 North 91 West.
Okay. You had an A1 too, correct?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's, I apologize. Yeah, that's just a general vicinity showing our well plot on the 9-section area.
Sure.
Vaguely.
Okay. Let's go ahead, move on to L2 and start going through your working interest in the underlying spacing units.
Okay, L2 shows section 1 of 155.91. Stevens owns 100% of the working interest outside of the EOG operated well.
Okay. And then L3?
That it shows the unit comprises section 12, 155 North 91 West, and outlines the ownership in that unit, the working interest ownership, showing SEG Williston with the majority interest.
Okay. And moving on to L4, your working interest in the 1280.
Again, that shows the 1280 that's made up of sections 1, 155 North 91 West, and section 12, 155 91 West. And then, again, this breaks down the working interest ownership in the unit and showing SEG Williston with the majority interest.
Okay. I have no further questions for Ms. Hudson. In this case, I'd offer the land exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Laura, just to confirm, when you were discussing L2, you indicated 100% working interest in section 1, but the well in that is
Yes.
operated by EOG?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from staff? Seeing none. Mr. Williamson, can you hear me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
David, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, and what capacity, and give us your business address?
David Williamson. I'm employed by Stevens Production Company. I'm a geosciences manager. Address is 1780 Hughes Landing Boulevard, Suite 300, The Woodlands, Texas.
And David, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes, I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes, I have.
And are you familiar with the geology underlying the spacing units?
I am.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Williamson be received as that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
And David, let's start with G1. If you can just take us through the structure underlying this proposed 1280.
Okay, this is a structure map of the middle block of contour interval of 20 feet in the general area. There's also a cross-section labeled A to A prime that will be used on the next exhibit. You can see the 4 Cabot well outlined there in dashed line. The average dip in this area is slightly less than 1 degree, kind of around 0.85. The apparent dip along the well borders will probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.42.
Okay, let's move on to G2. Take us through your type log cross-section.
Okay, the top log would be top log A, which would be to the west, which is the C. Lee Mueller. It shows a complete section from the upper Bakken all the way down to the Bird Bear. The target interval of interest labeled there under the green star at 8 prime would be the middle Bakken. The middle Bakken here is 34 to 35 feet thick, not a lot of variance. All 4 wells will be targeted in the middle Bakken. And then the Longstaff well is the nearest well to the unit. That'll be the primary well for geosteering, etc. But I showed A because it has a complete section.
Sure. Let's go ahead and move on to G3, if you can take us through your proposed plan of development for this spacing unit.
Okay, again, there's 4 slots here. They're 1,200 feet between the wells, 1130 between the center wells, just due to spacing with the vertical wells. Average spacing is around 1,200 feet. We plan to drill across two pre-existing laterals. The Goya Lynn in Section 12 is operated by Stevens, and the personnel in Section 1 is operated by EOG.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Williamson. I'd offer the geology exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
The existing wells in section 1 and 12, are they both Middle Bakken target short laterals?
Yes, they are.
And when you drill your Middle Bakken long, your 1280 wells, do you plan to continue producing or having those short lateral wells produce?
The one we operate, we will plug back. We will pull the 4.5 inch, pull the rod, or plug in the 4.5 inch after we pull the rod and tubing, and then evaluate the integrity of the wall after post-frac. We'll have to work with the EOG to see how they want to handle what we do there.
Okay. While you're drilling the well and or completing the wells, do you plan to do anything special while you drill across those existing wells?
Just try to, go through, make sure we have the best understanding of the geosteering, and make sure that we can try to be as far away as possible and still stay in the middle block and, to avoid collision.
Okay. And then completion-wise, do you plan to blank any stages when you cross those depleted intervals?
Yeah, 100 feet on either side with the plan according to our operations guy that's related to me.
Okay. Thank you.
David, this is Bruce Hicks. When you drill your pads, are you going to batch drill one, then go over to the other, or what's the plan?
I believe we want to bring in a butter rig and come in and start bringing it down. Just getting over drilling the well. I do not know that for sure, but that's what we're planning on doing in other areas near here.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none. Mr. Frank, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Jared, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Yes. My name is Jared Franke. I'm the Vice President of Engineering for Stevens Production Company on behalf of SEG Wilson LLC. And our business address is 1780 Hughes Landing Boulevard, Suite 300, The Woodlands, Texas 77380.
And Jared, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes, I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes, I have.
And you're familiar with the engineering-related matters associated with these spacing units?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Franke be received as that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
And Jared, let's start with your Exhibit E1, if you can take us through and summarize your reservoir data and economics.
Certainly. In this area, we expect the thickness of the entire Bakken interval, from the upper Bakken, middle Bakken to lower Bakken, all 3 benches to be a total of 87 feet thick. The average porosity across the full Bakken interval is about 11%. The oil saturation about 67%. Across the 1280 unit, we anticipate about 41 million barrels in place, with a oil EUR of 527,000 barrels, a recovery factor of about 1.3% for a single Middle Bakken well. Also in this area, we anticipate an initial GOR of about 500 standard cubic feet per barrel, with an expected rate of return of 79%. And all composed of well cost of about $8.1 million.
Okay. And Jared, in your opinion, if the overlapping 1280 is approved, is that going to prevent waste, protect trail of rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes.
I have no further questions for Mr. Frankie. I'd offer the engineering exhibit and gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
I have a question for Laura. Laura, you were talking about section 100% Stevens Energy, although EOG is the operator of the well. Can you tell us that relationship?
Yes, we actually acquired EOG interest outside of their existing wellbore. So that they're aware of our plans in that area.
Okay, so do they have the rights of the capture of that well, but no additional wells in the spacing unit? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none. Anything further on this matter, Mr. Mann?
Not in this case. Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
And that will conclude the hearing in case number 29633. Moving on, case number 29634. Application of SEG Williston LLC for an order amending the applicable orders for the Stanley Bakken Pool to establish an overlapping 2560-acre space unit described as sections 2, 3, 10, and 11, Township 155 North, Range 91 West, Montreal County, ND, and authorize one horizontal well to be drilled on such unit and for such other relief as may be appropriate. We'll go back to you, Ms. Hudson. Or I guess, will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of SEG Williston LLC, and I do have the same three witnesses testifying in this case.
All right, Ms. Hudson, I'm going to have to swear you in one more time. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
And Laura, again, in this case, in the packet, we have an Exhibit A1 as well. Can you describe that exhibit for us?
Yes, this exhibit shows the unit within the general area and also shows the existing wellbores and the proposed well in that unit.
Sure. And then let's move on to L1, if you can identify the proposed spacing unit.
This is a more simplified view of the spacing unit proposed. It's sections 2, 3, 10, and 11. 155 North, 91 West shows it in a kind of a greater area context.
Okay. And then let's move on to the working interest in the underlying base unit, starting with L2.
Sure. This unit is comprised of sections 2 and 11 of 155 North, 91 West. I've outlined the working interest ownership in this particular unit with SEG Williston having the majority interest.
Okay. And L3?
L3 is a unit comprised of sections 3 and 10, 155 North, 91 West, again with the working interest outlined with SEG Williston as the majority interest owner.
And then moving on to L4, your working interest in the proposed 2560.
Correct. Those are the 4 units the 2 units we discussed with the 4 sections. Showing SEG's working interest as a majority interest owner and outlining the rest of the working interest owners in that unit.
Okay. I have no further questions for Ms. Hudson. I'd offer the land exhibits.
The land exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Williamson. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
And David, let's start with your G1. Can you just describe the structure underlying the proposed spacing unit?
Yeah, it's a little walking structure map with contoured at 20-foot interval. Again, the depth is, slightly less than 1 degree, around 0.85 in this area, and the projected depth along the apparent depth along the lateral will be around a 0.4. And there's a cross section labeled A to A prime that will have the top log and an additional log on it, describing them.
Sure. Why don't we go ahead and move on to that G2, that cross-section type log?
Yeah, again, that 8 to 8 prime, top log, and red star, the log head well in the green star, and the target interval is the middle blocking, 34, 35 feet thick in this area, very consistent, and we're retargeting in the middle of the interval and steering accordingly to stay out of the shell.
Okay. And let's move on to G3, if you can just take us through your development plan.
Yeah, this will be a lease line well, so we'll be drilling in between 2 existing wells, and Elizabeth will be the well in section due east of there, and I think it's a wrong Carter due west of there, but we'll be drilling in between to just optimize drainage and not leave oil behind.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Williamson. I'd offer the geology exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
David, the lateral that appears to cross the section line between sections 2 and 3, that's a Madison horizontal well, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, correct.
And the existing 1280 wells are all drilled on, or are all targeting the middle Bakken also?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Jared, in the previous case, you had 527,000 EUR per well, and in this case, it's even less. You were traversing across 2 wells in the previous case, and they have cumed, 450,000 or so thousand barrels. In this case, you're not traversing across any, but you're drilling a lease line well. Did you discount the previous ones at all, and did you discount this one because of the proximity to the existing wells?
Yes, we did discount for the existing parent. In this case, because it's running parallel to more modern vintage pairing, this one is discounted a little bit lower. We expect slightly lower initial reservoir pressure with a lower IP and a shallower decline.
So what's the typical estimated ultimate recovery of a grass-rich well in this area that's not affected?
As far as the recovery factor,
No, the amount of barrels of oil, the EUR.
typically we expect to see somewhere between 550 and 600,000 barrels.
Okay, and do you believe that you're fracking into these are going to be Middle Bakken wells, right? So are you going to be fracking into the Three Forks and effectively producing that zone?
We believe that there is influence based on the technical work that we've done from the Three Forks, but the lower Bakken here is fairly thick, which should provide a pretty good buffer between the Three Forks. However, the Three Forks is lower quality in this area. It's not as prospective as an initial target, which is why all these wells are in the Middle Bakken. However, it is a secondary target that has potential to be exploited at a later point.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none. Mr. Frankie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and Jared, if you can just kind of summarize your reservoir data and economics on this proposed well.
Certainly. In this area, we expect the entire thickness of the Bakken petroleum system from the upper Bakken through the middle and lower Bakken to be about 87 feet thick. The average viscosity across the full thickness of the Bakken controlling system about 11%, and oil saturation at 67%. For this spacing unit at a 2560, we expect a 508,000 barrel EUR with a 0.6% recovery factor. The well cost is expected to be about $8.1 million. In this area, we expect an initial GOR of about 500 standard cubic feet per barrel, and the total well economics for a single Middle Bakken well at 54%, based on 100% working interest, 80% NI, normalized, $65 per barrel flat, and $3 per MCF flat.
Okay. And Jared, in your opinion, would the proposed spacing and drilling at a lease line well prevent waste, protect relative rights?
Yes.
Okay, I have no further questions. I'd offer the engineering exhibit and gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibit and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none? Anything further in this matter, Mr. Mann?
No, Mr. Examiner, thank you.
That will conclude the hearing in case number 29634. Moving on, case number 29681. Application of Petro Hunt LLC for an order authorizing the conversion of the State 1-16-2B well, file number 26281, located in the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 16, Township 144 North, Range 98 West, Little Knife Field, Billings County, ND, for the injection and disposal in the Dakota Group of acid gas or other waste products from the Little Knife Gas Plant pursuant to Chapter 43-02-05 of the North Dakota Administrative Code, and providing such other and further relief as the Commission deems necessary. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Petro Hunt LLC. And Mr. Examiner, I intend to call 3 witnesses. I also have Mr. Gary Kohler here as well, who can answer questions, but I don't intend to call them. And it'll be Donovan Poliniak, Mike Dewald, and Jesse Spoor. And I'm going to call Donovan first.
All right. Was it Mr. Poliniak? Was it? Yeah. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief? I do. And please make sure your microphone's on there. I don't. Okay. And sorry, I didn't hear you on the first one.
I do.
And Donovan, can I have you state your name and by whom you're employed?
My name is Donovan Polnick. I'm employed by Petro Hunt LLC, and I work at the Little Knife Gas Plant.
Okay, what's your position at the plant?
I'm the operations supervisor.
Okay. And Donovan, have you previously testified before this commission?
I have not.
Okay. Can you just briefly take us through sort of your educational background, work experience?
I have a Bachelor of Science in electrical technology. Was an electrician for about 10 years before I came to the plant, and I've been with the plant for 12 years.
Okay. And Donovan, are you familiar with the conversion of the State 116-2B well to an acid gas injector?
I am.
Okay. And you've been involved in that process?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd move the testimony of Mr. Polniak be received as that of an expert in this case.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Okay. And Donovan, why don't you go ahead and initially just kind of walk us through and give us some background on the project, including a summary of the conversion and the proposed operations.
The gas processed at the Little Knife plant contains hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. We remove these gases from the gas stream with an amine system. The amine system uses diethanol amine water solution to absorb the hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. The amine solution is then heated to drive off absorbed acid gases, preparing it for processing in our sulfur plant. As the years have progressed and new sweet formations are being produced, the amount of hydrogen sulfide has been declining. Modifications to our sulfur plant were submitted and approved by the North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality to enable the sulfur plant to continue to operate at a reduced volume. The sulfur plant began operation in 1978 and was designed to process 3,100 MCF of hydrogen sulfide gas, making 45 long tons of sulfur a day. The sulfur plant relies on temperature, which is created by burning some of the hydrogen sulfide in a closed reaction. It was designed to convert gas with an 80% hydrogen sulfide content. It currently operates on 50% hydrogen sulfide gas stream and at 10% of its design capacity, and only making 3 to 4 long tons of sulfur per day. You could use the analogy that the candle is about to go out. The sulfur plant emits sulfur dioxide, a byproduct of the sulfur-making reaction. The sulfur dioxide is released into the atmosphere along with any CO2 removed from the gas process. Sulfur dioxide is a regulated pollutant and is subject to many restrictions, including the Little Knife plant's operating permit and regional haze requirements that are due to take effect in the near future. Therefore, we feel that alternatives must be taken, and acid gas injection is the alternative that we are seeking to choose. Removing the hydrogen sulfide and CO2 from the gas stream will remain the same in our process. The H2S and CO2 will be sent to an acid gas injection compressor. The compressor will compress the gas from approximately 3 psi to 1300 psi and cooled in an aerial cooler to a liquid state to prepare it for injection underground. With the NDIC approval, we would like to inject the acid gases into the Dakota Formation via the conversion of the State 116-2B waste disposal well located within our plant property.
Okay. And Donovan, so to convert the State 116-2B well to an acid gas injection well, did Petro Hunt submit an application to the NDIC?
They did.
And have you been working with NDIC staff to ensure that the application was complete and supplemented to address any deficiencies?
We have.
Okay. And I don't need you to go through it, but in front of you, I got like a packet of exhibits here. Exhibit number 1, does that appear to be like the initial application filing?
Yes, that would have been in conjunction with it.
Okay. And then let's move on. Let's move on to exhibit number 2. So as part of the process for the conversion and the application, did Petro Hunt go through a worst-case scenario for a release situation?
Yes.
And does exhibit number 2, does that sort of describe the worst-case scenario?
It does. It's determined that the discharge pipeline, because it will be holding the liquefied hydrogen sulfide and CO2, it will hold the largest volume able to be released. So that's why our risk management plan was revolved around that. It's relatively a short, small diameter pipeline.
Okay. And so what are the, I guess, worst-case scenario, what are you looking at with respect?
Worst case scenario was a release of liquid, and I used a 100% hydrogen sulfide content of a 500-foot long Schedule 80 stainless steel pipeline, holds roughly 18 gallons of liquid. So if there were 18 gallons of hydrogen sulfide liquid released in the duration of several minutes, I think it's 10 minutes on this calculator here, it would carry 0.7 of a mile. That's highly unlikely that we will have 100% hydrogen sulfide in the pipeline, considering that we are processing gas that is roughly 50% CO2, 50% hydrogen sulfide. So if you were to take that worst case scenario, release that over 10 minutes, it's a half a mile dispersion. So that would be well away from any local residences.
Sure. So why don't you take a look at exhibit number 3 then, right here?
Yep.
So in looking at that worst-case scenario and what you described, you identified the residences in the area and you mapped out what you'd be looking at, how close they would be with respect to the worst-case scenario?
That's correct.
And it doesn't appear that any of them are near the sort of the outer reaches of the worst-case scenario?
That's correct.
let's move on then to what we've got marked and identified as exhibit number 4. Is that, I guess I refer to as an emergency management plan. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but is that plan in place and sort of, can you just summarize that for me? I don't want you to go through the entire thing,
So
but just.
that's, that would be what the plan would be if this were to be implemented. Our safety measures that will be taken. Some of this is also covering some of the remedial work that'll have to be done on the well itself. The rest of it will be normal plant operations. There will be things like emergency safety valves installed on a discharge of the compressor on the wellhead to isolate if there were a release, a breakdown of some sort, so we are able to isolate, we're able to monitor, we're able to keep people out of the area and isolate and close off all of those items from potentially causing any more damage or harm to anyone.
Sure. So in the event, if there were to be an incident with the acid gas injection well, this emergency management plan covers like sort of the process and procedures for handling that.
Right.
Let's move on. The next exhibit, there's an affidavit in there from Mr. Sean Riesenauer, but can you just briefly describe what you did to evaluate any freshwater wells in the area and any impacts?
Sure.
Wait, sorry to interrupt, but
Yep.
it's kind of hard for me to follow where your exhibits are. I mean, we've got a huge packet here and nothing is really pulled out. Could you kind of give us an idea where these exhibits are?
Sure, they should be, and I apologize for that, they should be in order. I thought I had them separated, but, so after,
That could be in one.
so after, at the end of the emergency management plan, we've got marked as exhibit number 5, affidavit of freshwater wells. And that's what we're on to right now.
Yes.
So, go ahead, Donovan, just take us through what.
So there's currently 2 water wells within the quarter-mile area of review there. The one we currently use at the plant is located in section 15. The other one is located in section 16, right inside the plant fence, and that one was not sampled because it does not have an operable pump in it. There was another test hole that was drilled and has been plugged and abandoned at the time the test hole was drilled, so it's not a well.
Sure. I guess that's all the questions that I have for Donovan at this point. I'd offer the exhibits 1 through 5 right now.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Donovan, how deep are the water wells?
They're both, well, the one well that is not have the operable pump is around 400 feet, 300 and something, 400 feet. I think it's actually listed on the exhibit there. The other one is a Fox Hills well, and it is approximately 2,000 feet deep.
And the Fox Hills is the one that you're using?
The Fox Hills is the one we're using.
Can you tell us the percent of H2S in the acid gas?
Currently, we're processing our acid gas stream is roughly 50% H2S and 50% CO2. There's a little bit of hydrocarbons that slip through there, a small amount. If our plant were to gain some inlet gas, that CO2 number more than likely would go up because no one's really processing sour oil anymore, so it's kind of pushing that H2S down. So it could just about be considered CO2 capture too.
Is it your intent at some point to prohibit any H2S coming into the plant?
It is not. We are designed to handle the H2S. We don't have any problem processing it. It's just the sulfur plant itself has become a problem.
So initially, what would be the volume of acid gas that you would be injecting?
We would be injecting anywhere from 330 to about 380 MCF per day of acid gas, which would equate to about 130 barrels of liquid.
And you're going to liquefy this before you inject it, is that right?
That's the plan, is to try and get it to a liquid state so that it's heavy enough to go down the hole. If we allow it to stay a gas, we may not, we may not develop the injection pressure necessary because we won't have the hydrostatic head.
What pressure do you anticipate?
We're anticipating a 1,300 pound discharge pressure with less than that, probably going into the formation, just holding some back pressure on that. The 1,300 pounds was decided upon in conjunction with an engineering firm because during the summertime we may not be able to, at elevated temperatures, get enough aerial cooling to bring it to a liquid state, so a little bit more pressure will help that. So we won't have to be dealing with a two-phase flow.
Do you know what the current pressure of the Dakota is immediately around the wellbore?
We're currently injecting water into the Dakota, and we have been putting, the well will go in a vacuum if you let it sit, but we've been putting water down the hole at roughly 30 gallons a minute, and we get up to about 600 pounds, and you can do that for hours and hours.
Okay, what does that equate to a bottom hole pressure in the Dakota?
About 2,400 pounds.
And I assume you have no shut-in pressure on the well then, if it's taken on hydrostatic?
Yeah, it goes away.
How many wells do you have in the Dakota, just the one, that you're injecting water into?
We have one in the plant, and we have one in section 15 across the road from the plant.
And I'm sorry if you mentioned that, but are you using both of those then?
Yes. Our plant disposal goes to the one that's in the plant in section 16, and the one in section 15, some production water from the Little Knife field goes there.
And is somebody gonna talk about any possible reaction of the acid gas with the injected water in the Dakota?
Can you address that?
Yeah, I can. So the reaction when you start mixing the acid gases in with the water is it will make a weak acid. It'll make a weak carbonic or a weak sulfuric because we're going to be putting CO2 and H2S down the hole. That acidic effect may actually lower the injection pressure over time. It may be slow in coming, but it possibly will do that. We have not had any issue injecting water for the last over 40 years into that well at the plant. So I don't foresee any issue with that. Water is an incompressible fluid. If we're not causing an increase in bottom hole pressure because we're putting water into it, the acid gases are semi-dissolvable in the water, so we should be getting a little bit of a squish when we kind of go in. Does that address your concern?
Well, part of it does. As far as injection goes, will this just be a dedicated well for acid injection, or will you also be injecting water?
It'll be dedicated to the acid gas injection, yes. Due to the possibility of hydrate formation and issues deriving from elevated amounts of moisture, we're going to refrain from putting any free water into it.
Okay, thank you.
Donovan, you described your Exhibit 2 as a worst-case scenario. If you look at that exhibit, it deals with acid gas trapped in the injection line and an injection line leak. What is going to be in place to make sure that that injection line gets completely isolated in the case of an incident, that it's disconnected from the well and from the plant?
So there will be a ESD valve, emergency valve on the discharge of the compressor where the line starts. The line will partially be buried and it will come back up to the surface, and at the surface in front of the wellhead, there will be a pressure letdown valve there, and there will also be another ESD valve there to isolate that portion of the pipeline as well as possible. There will also be gas monitors installed in the compressor building and around the pipeline in the areas where there is components that could possibly leak, valve packings and things like that. And it is probably going to be connected to a system so that if we end up with a high elevated amount of H2S, that those valves will shut automatically, so no one is running into that area to try and close it.
And if those valves close, where does the acid gas go?
It'll either be trapped into the line, or we could also pipe it to our flare to purge it. In the event of a break, I think we're going to end up with a little bit of dry ice, because we're going to end up opening up some CO2, liquid CO2, to the atmosphere, and it's probably going to slow the leak down quite substantially.
And when you're potentially working on the injection well, what precautions have you identified to make sure that there isn't some release from work on the injection well? Because it's going to have an MIT periodically and have to be worked on periodically.
Right. We have a flare on site at the plant, and we will be able to put a flare connection to everything that needs to be worked on, the compressors, the pipeline, all of those items, and we do have gas, sweet gas available that we can purge things with. So we're able to open them up to on low atmosphere or no pressure conditions, so we can open up the casing to zero pressure, we can open up the wellbore to zero pressure, we can let things equalize, we can sweeten them up, we can flush them out with the gas. We can take our time getting things ready to get worked on so that they're not going in trying to work on something that's incredibly sour, and then if it ends up being an atmosphere, they will have to put an SCBA on and work on items if that becomes necessary. Our plant is fully equipped with all breathing apparatuses like that.
And you made reference to 0.7 of a mile. I can't remember the exact word you used. The H2S would carry 0.7 of a mile?
Yes.
Or what do you mean by that? Does it, at that point, is it below detectable levels, below toxic levels? What happens at 0.7 of a mile?
That would be immediately dangerous to life and health.
So it drops below
And I think,
immediate danger levels?
yes, when they're talking like 100 parts per million.
Okay. And does their dispersion model take into account the fact that H2S and CO2 are heavier than air?
I believe it does. This is actually from the EPA's website. They make you do the risk management right there on their own little calculator, and you actually go in and you grab the component and you put it in their calculator. So I can't quite tell you what they all do with it internally to it, but I believe that they do, because it does tell you that it's liquefied because of pressure, not because of refrigerant, and the quantity released, the direction traveled, kind of how that plays out. I played with that a little bit online too, because I didn't fully understand it at first. If these releases are over a 10-minute period, and that 0.7 of a mile actually carries that out farther because it's longer. If that line were to completely sever off and all of that would come out in 1 minute, it was actually less distance. It was only like 0.2 of a mile. But that's not what we use for worst case scenario, because we're looking for that little bit farther distance and the absolute worst case scenario. You would think that the line severing and completely dumping it would be the worst case, but I guess that's not how it calculated here.
So the model is an EPA
Yes, it is.
model?
Yep.
And does it take into account weather conditions,
Yep.
wind speed, temperature?
77 degrees.
I'm sorry?
It's right on there. It says 77 degrees, 3.4 miles per hour, northwesterly wind. So 99% of the time, it's probably more than 3.4 miles an hour around here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did you pick those numbers?
That's
Those seem not like North Dakota weather.
Right. If you've ever had to look at any kind of dispersion modeling, they kind of push you into a lower number so that you have to, it's worst case.
So higher wind, it would more quickly disperse.
That's
So
correct.
this is a worst-case scenario in terms of
Yes.
wind speed.
Nearly calm.
And temperature-wise, like when it's -10, I mean, can you experiment with those?
I don't know that I could change the settings on that. I don't know if that would be more or less. The temperature, I did not divulge into that generator if it gives you that type of access to it. It was mostly the amount and the time.
And this proposed well is within the plant site?
It is.
And the plant site is fully equipped with H2S alarms, and
It is.
personnel are all trained. Who would be the emergency responders in the case of a release? Are they on notice? Or, I guess, who, is it county?
Yes.
Emergency response?
So it goes to, obviously, they're gonna notify us, but then it also goes to the county, the fire department, and we talk to them periodically too, you know, if there's something like a fire in plant, let it burn out, stay away. We're going to secure the inlet to the plant, we're gonna take the fuel source away, and then when the flames start to subside, you can do your job. You know, they're gonna assist us in traffic control and items like, you know, getting an ambulance on site, getting people out of the area. It's kind of gonna be a little bit of a hands-off thing because it's toxic gas.
But you've got a relationship with the local emergency management, and you periodically
Yes.
go through training exercises, talk about hazards.
Keep the conversation open anyway about what could possibly happen, you know, talk with the local law enforcement, items like that.
Kind of following up on one of Mr. Hicks's questions, did you do any type of lab testing or anything to look at the compatibility of the Indian Cara water and the acid gas? I mean, is it high iron content or something in that water that would be a concern?
We have not, you know, it is currently permitted as a disposal well right now, so we've been putting our plant water into it for many, many years. Most of our water that goes down the hole is actually fresh water.
Okay.
So we put things like reverse osmosis permeate goes down, the retentate actually goes down the hole. The water that we squeeze out of the gas as we dry it goes down the hole. So I don't foresee anything reactive happening with that sweet, that you know, that fresh water that we're really using there. How well it's mixed into the formation, I guess I couldn't tell you that part of it.
And do you have some type of model for tracking the plume size, you know, based on, say, gallons or barrels or tons of acid gas that you're going to inject? What that'll look like a year from now, 5 years, 10 years out?
Yes, I've looked at that, and I've calculated the radius of influence downhole. If we're to inject 130 barrels per day, I think we'd be, in about 8 years, we'd be about 230 feet around the wellbore. If we were allowed to do a quarter mile, I think we'd be 198 years. So it's, we're putting a relatively small volume in the hole.
Thank you.
Donovan, I do have a few other questions. The Dakota itself, is it a blanket formation, or do you see some channeling where the sand isn't continuous throughout the entire area?
I may have to have Jesse answer that.
Okay, well, we can wait on that. Is the area around the plant and the injection well, is it flat or is it in a dip? You know, what's gonna happen if you do have a leak? Is it gonna wanna stay there if there's no, you know, if the winds are calm? Or are you on a hill?
We're in a relatively flat area. It does slope downward from the east to the west slightly. The disposal well will be located on the west side of the plant. We have buildings and some structure around that slows the wind down a little bit. In our past experience, if we have anything that is even close to a leak, it dissipates quite quickly.
And I just want to confirm, are you going to have safety equipment installed between the compressor and the injection flow line? So if there's a leak in that flow line, that it would automatically shut down?
Yes.
Can you kind of describe that system? Is it a SCADA system that would automatically shut it down, or is it a manual? Or
So the plant is a 24-hour manned facility, so there are always two people in the plant at all times. There will be some H2S detective devices, like I was saying before, where the beginning and the end of the pipeline, the middle portion will probably be inaccessible because it'll be buried. There'll be some ESD valves and a H2S monitor there, and we can set those up to make those automatically shut those valves, need be, or there'll be a button in the control room, which will be located on several hundred feet away from where the compressor will be located. So yes, there'll be an automatic control system there for it, with a manual override, with people on location.
Okay, and what do you mean that it could be set up to be automatic? I mean, isn't this something that
It will
be
be
serious
set up
enough
that
that
way.
it would have to be automatic?
Yep, yep.
Will this process allow additional sour wells to be connected to your system, or is it just the future regulation that you see coming that is pushing this?
It's both. I don't know that they're going to actively seek out any sour formations, but I know the Bakken has shown a little bit of H2S here and there, and it can be at levels that are high enough to not make pipeline quality gas. So it does necessitate in places that you use some sweetening product or an amine system to clean that gas up so that we can sell it properly. We already are set up for all of that, so we intend to keep the amine process and the sour oil production that's there already in place. Maybe Jesse can elaborate a little bit more on sour oil, but at the price of oil right now, they hate to see the sour wells that we have go away.
Do you have any limits on how much H2S can be in the gas right now?
We can take quite a bit. They used to take over 20% inlet was H2S.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to your next witness,
Mike Dewald will be next.
Mr. DeWald. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do. Mike, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Mike Dewald, landman with Petro Hunt, P.O. Box 935, Bismarck, North Dakota 58502.
And Mike, have you previously testified before this commission?
I have.
Yes, probably don't really need you to be sworn as an expert in this particular case, but what I'd like you to do, Mike, were you involved in providing notification of this application to adjacent landowners in the area?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And in exhibit number 1, contained within there, there's copies of the letters that you sent, is that correct?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And then I think you've also included the return receipts reflecting service upon each of those owners?
Yep, that's correct. So if you look at page, it's about 18 into exhibit 1, at the bottom of the sheet, it's a plat map. It's labeled 9B of 14. And this map does a good job of showing the various tracts and landowners within that quarter-mile radius of the proposed well. And then following that plat map are the letters sent to the landowners giving notice of this application. And then following those letters are the proof of delivery of that letter.
Okay. Did you receive any contact or communication from any of them expressing any concerns?
One phone call from a landowner, not really any concerns, but other than that, no.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Dewald.
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Mike, there's two existing acid gas wells that I'm aware of anyway in North Dakota. One's over in the Grasslands area, Mondack, operated, I believe, by One Oak, and then the other is up in the Lignite/Rival area that is operated by Steel Reef. Have you contacted them, or has your company, to find out if there's been any incidents in operating their wells?
I have not personally. I'm not sure if any of the other guys have.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that would be important to have, is if you could make that contact and then just supplement the record.
Can I email you to get the names of the wells and all that?
Yes. We do have those listed on our GIS map server.
Okay,
and-
I'll find them.
And they're listed as acid gas field.
Mr. Examiner, Donovan has been to one of those sites. I don't know if he want get his input on that. You
For Mr.
want,
Donovan? Yeah.
if I could recall him.
So I visited the one that was in McKenzie County at the Grasslands gas plant that One Oak operates. I visited with the engineer that works at the plant that was working there at the time. I think he's since retired. And we did a walk around of their compressor and of their wellhead and of their whole system, and I saw where they had ESDs mounted and where they had gas detection equipment and the length of the pipeline and the size and metallurgy and all of that kind of stuff. I did not cover any incident stuff with him, but I did lay my eyes on everything and saw what they were using for pressures and temperatures and all of the items of that sort. That well's been running pretty reliably. I've looked at the well file for that. It's been running pretty reliably for them for quite a while. I believe that is the second one that they have had. They had one that must have failed on them or something before that.
Well, we appreciate that, but we would want to get a follow-up.
Sure.
After your visits with them on their practices. Thank you.
Any further questions from Mr. Dewald from commission staff? Seeing none, was Mr. Spore, was it? Is your next witness?
Yes, correct.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Jesse, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, and in what capacity, and give us your business address?
I'm Jesse Spore. I've worked for Petro Hunt for going on 4 years now as the district engineer, and my address is 390 119th Avenue Southwest in Kildare, North Dakota, 58640.
Jesse, have you previously testified before this commission?
No, sir.
Okay. Can you just briefly take us through your educational background, work experience?
Yep. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering from Montana Tech in 2018, and I've been in the oil industry ever since. So.
Okay. And have you been involved in the conversion of the state 116-2B well into an acid gas conversion well? Or
Yes.
Injection well, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're familiar with what's been done with respect to getting that well converted and ensuring the mechanical integrity is in place for the well?
Yes, sir.
I'd move the testimony, Mr. Spore, be received as that of an expert in this case.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
And I guess initially, why don't you just go ahead and kind of walk us through what your role has been, and primarily with respect to, like I said, the conversion process, and then what you've done to make sure that the State 116 2B well will have the necessary mechanical integrity to take on the acid gas injection.
Yeah. So most of my role has been with the downhole work and communicating with Ashley Day on what the concerns are with the well and what potentially needs to be done in order for this well to be up to quality for injection. Do you want me to go through some of the history on
Yeah,
that?
if you could, I think included within, at the end of exhibit number 1, we've got sort of a, like a checklist or sort of what's been done or what will be done with respect to the procedure. If you can kind of walk us through that process and summarize that for us.
Yeah, so it was originally completed in '77, and it's a Madison well, and then converted to a water disposal in '83. The production perfs are isolated with about a 500-foot balance plug, starting at 6,378 feet, and a bridge plug as a plug back at 6,000 feet for the injection perfs at from 5770 to 5814. And there has been a casing leak that was squeezed in 2014, isolated between 4995 and 5124. Some of the biggest concern that we had with this well was the isolation below the Dakota to the Swift Formation. So what we plan to do is pull that bridge plug and then run a CBL and reevaluate, given that the old CBL is from '77. So we'll get a better idea on the integrity of the cement job. And from there, if we need to squeeze it, we will. And we have a plan in place, assuming that we will need to squeeze it. And then after that, usually we want our packers set within 50 foot of our perfs, and we've had some problems with the packers sealing within that area on this well, and with the state's permission in the past, we've raised that packer up, so right now it's about 120 foot away from the perfs, which isn't ideal. So, but we won't really need that much capacity in our tubing string, so we want to run a 4.5-inch liner and cement it into place throughout for the entire wellbore, so that we have that old casing leak that we squeezed would be isolated, and then also we would have better pipe for packers to set in.
And marked as exhibit number 6, we've got, you mentioned like a cement bond log. Do you have a copy of that there?
Yeah.
Can you just describe what that log is?
Yeah, so that bond log is for the State 516 2B, which is the nearest well to this one. And I don't think, I was talking with Ashley and we had just a question on the integrity of the cement job on that one, and then we confirmed that it's well isolated and won't be an issue.
Okay. That's all the questions that I have for Mr. Spohr at this time.
Would you offer?
Yeah,
that?
I'd offer the exhibits, yep.
Okay, the exhibit is admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Jesse, I guess, just confirming a couple things. So the CBL at the back of the packet is not for the well you plan to convert, that's for the neighboring well, right?
Yes, sir.
and you do intend to run in, clean out the existing well so you can run a new CBL and confirm you have proper isolation.
Yep.
If that, and I think you testified to this, but if that doesn't look well isolated, you would intend to squeeze?
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess the question was asked a little bit earlier about evaluating the injection zone. Have you looked at the Dakota in this well and in the surrounding wells?
Yeah, I've been in contact with our geology and pretty familiar with the Dakota zone in that area.
Okay. Do you know how, do you know if the Dakota appears to be more sheet sand or more channel sand type development?
It's layered, so I mean most of it is an unconsolidated sand, and ideal for this. It ranges from, I think we're usually around 22% porosity, and then there's thin layering of siltstone that can separate, I guess, make some channeling, I guess, between the sections of it, I guess you'd say.
I think I'm gonna ask for a supplemental exhibit, maybe a couple of them. If you could supplement with a couple of cross sections of the Indian Kara, basically the confining zones and the Indian Kara across the area, probably something north-south and east-west, or northeast-southwest, however you want to do it, but probably a couple cross sections. Showing the character of the sand, correlating if possible, and maybe a total thickness map of the sands, so an ice pack of the sand interval. I think that will help. Thank you.
Jesse, do you have Newcastle present?
Yes.
Is it being injected into currently?
No.
Do you plan to reperf additional zones in the well, or will it be basically the same?
It'll be the same.
And will your liner be run all the way through the perforations and cemented in, or will you, how deep do you plan to run that liner?
We'll run the liner right above the perfs. So the plan is to put a dissolvable plug right above the existing perfs, dump sand on it, and then so that it'll seal, and then run the liner right above it, wherever that ends up, so we can get the most out of it as possible.
And will that be run all the way to surface?
Yes.
And is it your intent to cement all the way to surface then?
Yes.
Is there any special tubing that's required to inject through?
We'll have to use 2 3/8 coated tubing, but given that the surface line is 1 inch in diameter, it shouldn't be any sort of restriction on our flow.
What kind of coating is that on the tubing?
There is plastic tubing that gets used, and then there's a thinner one. I'm blanking on the name.
But it would be corrosion
Yes.
resistant with the
Yes.
acid gas. Okay, thank you.
With respect to the cementing and the liner above the perforations, if you had to perforate and do some remedial work at the Swift, how would that set of perfs and that cement be protected from the acid gas injection?
Well, there would be a bridge plug above that. So the plan, there's a bridge plug at 6,000 foot currently, and then our perfs would be at 6,050. So we would be isolating them from this stream.
So, I might have misheard something there, but if you had to perf and squeeze the Swift, what approximate depth are you thinking that would be at?
The perf depth would be 6,050.
6,050? and you'd intend to set a retainer and squeeze
Yeah.
and leave some cement on top of that,
Yes.
okay? Would that be exposed to your injection stream?
No, we plan to drill it out and run a follow-up
Follow-up
CBL,
CBL.
and then put a bridge plug back in place where there currently is one.
Okay, so you'd come back and put a bridge plug in again, atop of that, but that bridge plug would be exposed to the
Yes.
acid gas stream.
Yes.
Is there any, special bridge plug equipment that would be resistant to the acid gas? Or what is that, reaction there?
Yeah, you can run nickel-plated equipment, and that would be more resistant than, say, a cast iron.
Okay, and would that be your intent to do so?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none? I guess were a couple requests for supplementing the record there, Mr. Mann. What kind of timeline are we looking at for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think as far as getting those supplemental exhibits? Is like 2 weeks enough time, or we need longer?
No, that's fine.
2 weeks should be sufficient.
If they're willing to give us the info.
Yeah, I guess that's more dependent on One Oak's privacy status,
Sure.
but I do have inside contacts if needed.
Okay. Mr. Examiner, if we could request 2 weeks from today?
2 weeks from today, that would be November 30th. The record will remain open until Wednesday, November 30th. for
Did you
supplement.
give us a time frame of when you plan to start or want to start any work on the well?
No, that'll be more dependent on when we can get it approved, and then
I
we'll
mean, would you
start
do
right
it over the
away.
winter, or would you wait until spring, or?
We do it right away. I don't think there's really anything preventing us from working on it, I guess, as far as weather goes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is any further questions from staff? Seeing none? Anything further in this matter, Mr. Mann?
No, Mr. Examiner, thank you.
And that will conclude the hearing in case number 29681. And moving on. Guess I should call a supplement here. Case number 29346. Application of Oventive Production, Inc. for an order amending the applicable orders for the Lost Bridge and/or Bear Creek Bakken Pools to establish a stand-up to 1920 acre spacing unit described as sections 10, 15, and 22, Township 148 North, Range 96 West, Dunn County, ND, and authorize 6 horizontal wells to be drilled on such unit and granting such other relief as may be appropriate. This case is continued to December.